Consider this. A teenager growing up in 1960s Texas underwent a huge shift in her educational experience. Our government had decided that separate was not equal and that she, an African American, was soon to be attending high school at a predominantly white high school. She excelled there, went on to college, and ultimately made Peoria, Illinois her home. And now, some 50 years later, she's going back to Paris, Texas to be celebrated as one of its most distinguished alumni. How did she do it? She says music got her through. And if you have been a student of Peoria's District 150 school system in the last 30 years, she probably helped music get you through too. I'm Yvonne Greer, and my guest is Sharon Samuels Reed, Artistic Director of Peoria's Heritage Ensemble. Next on Consider This. Sharon Samuels Reed has spent more than 30 years teaching music in Central Illinois, in Peoria and in Pekin as well. It is my pleasure to welcome you to Consider This.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to be here.
So take us back, if you will, to Texas, when you discovered that integration was going to be underway and you were switching schools.
I was a junior in high school, 1966. The decision was made that we would no longer have separate schools. I don't ever remember them talking about separate but equal. So we were no longer going to experience the separate schools. So I got the word along with everybody else about in the spring of my sophomore year that the end of that year our school would actually close down and we would all be expected to go to Paris High School. Gibbons High School, the school where I had gone, my parents had gone, and all of us as African Americans had gone over the years, would be closed. Not just changed, but closed. And so that experience for me probably was not as traumatic as it would have been had I been more aware of the separate but equal experience. Mm-hmm. I had been blessed with parents who worked very hard to provide me with unique experiences that African American, non-African American children did not have, with private voice lessons and private piano lessons and organ lessons and those kinds of things in the etiquette classes. So it was not as traumatic for me personally as it might have been had I been more aware of the real world around me.
And so how did your music help you through that experience over the next 2 years?
Well, the experience of having had private lessons, a God-given voice, I think I could not be denied, if you will, what I would undertake at Paris High School. There was a gentleman whose name was Rip Cannon, who was the choir director. And when I was auditioning for the choir, he said to me, "How does your voice ever stop? How high does it go?" I didn't have a clue, I just kept singing. And then he said to me, "Tell me your name again." And I said, "Sharon Samuels." And he said, "Do you know Leroy Samuels?" And I said, "Yes, that's my father." He says, "That answers all of my questions." And so I became the soloist, one of the soloists for the Paris High School Choir. I was one of the ones that Mr. Cannon would take to the country club to sing, to do special things. But I must admit, sometimes instead of riding the school bus with others, he would allow me, or encourage me, I thought allow me, to ride the car with him and his wife, Nan. I had no idea that it was for any other reason except that I was special and unique. So I was probably safeguarded by Rip Cannon, his wife, Nan, and my parents, and just my upbringing in a community that loved me and just had high expectations of me.
So your father was a musician as well?
My father was a professional gospel singer. I say professional gospel singer because he used to go all over the place and sing. He wanted me to be classically trained so that I would be able to walk indoors that he never could walk in. He wanted me to have that formal education. So at age 8, I started taking private piano lessons with Mrs. Inez Scott, and I have not been a day in my life since November 12, 1958, without either being a student of private lesson or teaching music.
And why is music so important to you?
Music is my lifeline, I think. You know, when I think past what my family is, of course, what God is in my life, my support system, my family. When I think past that, I think music has been the vehicle that I've been able to travel on that has allowed me and encouraged me and demanded that I walk in certain circles that I would not otherwise have been asked into, certainly not encouraged to do. So music has been the vehicle on which I've taken that journey of my life. And as Maya Angelou says, wouldn't take nothing
From my
for my
journey
journey
now.
now. Absolutely.
So you go on to college, study music in college as well?
Yes. Actually, when I went away to college, I think I was expected to pursue opera because that's what I had been most trained in. But I went to high school in 1968. I graduated high school in May, a month after Dr. King had been assassinated. So when I went away to college, there were greater things that took my attention than whether or not I would be able to sing professionally. And I guess I made the decision, probably unconscious decision, to use music as a way to impact the lives of the people with whom I would come in contact rather than pursue a professional career.
And so into music you went. How did you get from Texas to Peoria?
The love of my life, LaCollis Reed, was a senior my freshman year, and he graduated with a degree in math education. And at the time when he graduated in 1969, Peoria was recruiting African American teachers. And to recruit those teachers, they came to the historically black colleges and university across the land. And so he started teaching here in '69. We continued to date in 1970, married, and I stayed down there and graduated with my degree in music and then moved up here in January of 1972. And we thought we would be here for a short period of time, and we're still here, still here.
And so what ingratiates you to this community as far as your music goes? When you became a music teacher, after having once thought you were going to be a professional opera singer, was there a spark? What made those roots start to spread out for you and make you say, this is my calling?
I think those roots probably formed long before I realized they were formed. Even though I had been able to take private lessons and do things and, you know, be a part of the concert series and have my teacher, when my parents were working, my private teacher would pick me up and take me to community concerts. And so I think even though I had all of those experiences, my parents would always say to me, to whom much is given, much is required. And I thought that was something that they said. I later realized that that is directly from the Bible. And so my dad used to say to me, it doesn't matter, baby girl, how much you get out of life. And I'm paraphrasing. It's how many people you can look to either side and see with you on that journey. And yeah, Dad, I hear that. Yeah, Mom, I hear that. And you go on with what you're doing. But as I continued to be blessed with experiences, with opportunities, with people who saw something special in me, the more I realized that my calling was to do that same thing for everybody else around me. And so I think they were there probably long before I realized.
You have become to many students, former students in District 150, Mama Reed.
Yes.
You have, I think, a keener eye than some other educators and even some parents, because around the music there's sort of a relaxed atmosphere and kids would open up to you in ways that they may not in other environments.
Right.
With your finger on the pulse of younger people in our society today, what's prevalent in their thoughts?
I'm no longer in the classroom and don't have as much contact as I wish I did. But what worked for me, and I think still would work, were I in more contact with today's youth, is the reciprocity of respect. I was blessed enough to have the same students from their freshman year through their senior year. And so it was more of a family atmosphere. The kinds of programs that I was in charge of, I needed their parents, their caregivers to be a part. And so reaching out and treating people the way I wanted to be treated myself I think, took my career along a very beautiful path, if you will. And so when I'm called, as I often am, in to consult now, I walk in teaching the same way that I taught when I was in the classroom on a daily basis. The first thing I do is assess the room. Try to get a feel for what that room feels like. What is the culture of the students in the organization or the choir or the class that I'm about to address? When I was teaching every day, and I had large classes, but I stood at the door every single day and watched every student enter so I could get an idea of how he or she felt as they were walking in the classroom. And on many occasions, it was not music that I addressed first. I addressed the students first. I made sure that I called every name every day, even when I was blessed with assistants. I took attendance. I called their name every day. And it was a practice in my classroom that when I'm ready to be heard, I will stand behind the podium. And you must stop whatever you're doing, whether it's an action or whether it's a conversation, and just listen. And if you start talking while I'm talking, I'm going to stop and listen to you, because you must have something really important to say if you're talking while I'm talking. If you're talking during the class period at a time that I'm behind the podium, then you must want to address the entire class. And so we would establish that on the first day. I didn't ignore behaviors, good or needs improvement behaviors. Whatever they were doing was important to me. And it would probably feel like chaos to someone who walked into the room to see the students moving about before the bell rings or having conversations with their inside voices before the bell rang. But once the bell rang, it was your responsibility to be in your seat. And if you were not in your seat, then I needed to pay attention as to why you weren't in your seat. Why are you not ready to begin? And if there was some crisis or something going on at the school, I would address that with the students. We would talk about that before I would try to teach music. Because music, to me, is a personal expression. And you need to be ready to express what I need you to express as a group. So I need to know what you're feeling in order to teach you what I need you to feel while I'm teaching.
You also had an opportunity to take that framework of assessing your class and creating that atmosphere of respect to Pekin.
Absolutely.
Predominantly white community.
Yes.
Was that reminiscent of your experience back in Paris?
It was then that I understood what God had been doing in my life all of those years.
How so?
Pekin was about the same size as Paris. I was thrust, I was invited into an all-white environment. And a decision had to be made. How will you approach this? How will you be who you are while working with? I never believed that I needed to assimilate. I needed to be who I was, and that I had the special gift to be able to thrive in that environment. And indeed I did at Pekin Community High School for some 7 years. Was every day wonderful? Absolutely not. But I did not have to deal with what I thought I was going to have to deal with in an overt fashion. I went there thinking that I was going to have to just knock down walls and, come in and let you know who I am and what I do, and oh, no, you won't. I didn't have to do that. So again—
And that had to be very refreshing.
Yes, it was very refreshing. And so I came to look at race, racial, or look at life perhaps a little bit differently in a more expanded role. And I came to realize that going to Pekin was God's way of helping me to grow for what I would eventually become back here in Peoria. And that was the director of fine arts. I needed to learn how to advocate and be a champion for all of the arts, not just for my own music class. I had to learn how to look past my own limitations and look at a larger role. I was able to do that in Pekin. And so when I came back here, when District 150 invited me back as the Director of Fine Arts, I was more prepared because there I was not only invited to become choir director, I was invited to become the chairperson of cultural studies. So all of the languages and all of the arts became mine to advocate for and be a champion for. So that helped me to grow beyond what I was accustomed to doing in my own world of, even though here at Woodruff I was chairperson of the music department, that was not the same thing as advocating for all of the arts. And so being at Pekin was definitely a growing experience for me and a very positive experience.
When did you create the Heritage Ensemble?
Actually, I was teaching in Pekin when the Heritage Ensemble was established, and we had our first concert here in Peoria at Bradley University's Dingledine Center in August of 1999. As a result of Fiora Contino, the artistic director of Opera Illinois, inviting me into a meeting one day, sharing with me that their board had decided that they wanted to do Porgy and Bess. And she helped me to understand that she didn't think it was possible without me. That's where those special gifts come in. Because I came into that meeting thinking, why me? You know, I'm no longer here. I'm in Pekin. I will do this and I will do that. But she said to me, I need you to recruit and to train that pivotal chorus of Porgy and Bess. Absolutely. And so, again, I was open to more growth.
And that experience gave you the confidence you needed to start the ensemble?
No, not quite like that.
Okay.
When we finished it, and in the midst of producing Porgy and Bess, Fiora Contino, who took me under her wing personally, provided me with growing experiences musically and as a conductor. I used to say, ooh, I want to be a conductor like you one day. And she would say, you already are a conductor. So, you know, she would help me to understand the potential that I still had in me. But more than that, she said to me, will you keep this chorus together when we're finished with Opera Illinois' production of Porgy and Bess? And I was like, I don't have time for this. We had already been doing Porgy and we did the concert version of Porgy and Bess. We did Dreamgirls through Peoria Players as that same core group of performers. And she said, will you keep this group together in a formal way? And I was like, no, I don't have time for that. And she said, Sharon, you will never have time, but the community needs you to do this. And that's all she said. So I had to go and think about that. Somebody like Fiora Contino.
Who had your respect.
Yeah, who thought that I could bring something special to this community. So I had to go and pray and talk to my family, my husband particularly, about it, because it would be something that would require a lot. And I thought about it and I prayed about it, and I thought, as I looked about me, yeah, people in the community call you when they want a cast of African Americans to produce a production. And I thought, who better than I, along with all of the people that had already become a part of my support system, who better than we to form this group? That the mission would simply be, we exist to celebrate African American history and culture through music. And so you set your own agenda. And there's a good feeling about being able to set your own agenda.
In watching performances by the Heritage Ensemble, I hear your father's gospel, I hear your experience with drama and theatrical interpretation, I hear contemporary music, you see young people coming in as part of the Heritage Youth Ensemble. Did you foresee that amount of growth and inclusion from the outset, or did you just pull up your bootstraps and go?
I think a little bit of both. When the decision was made and I began to research more my own roots in music, I began to take on even more pride than I already had, because the Heritage Ensemble celebrates all of the music born out of the African American experience. And so when we look at what this country celebrates as its art form, that grew out of the Negro spiritual that emanated out of the belly of the antebellum slave. And so there's a sense of pride, there's a sense of sit up straight. It's more than pull your bootstraps up, it's straighten your back, walk right, and be able to tell the whole world what you've done in this country. And the importance of inclusion. In my opinion, when the Heritage Ensemble began, there was a void of formally established, if you will, choral ensembles. Our churches have some absolutely fabulous gospel choirs.
Yes, they do.
But the experience of the African American is much broader than that. And I wanted the world to know the role of the African American, the slave, and all of the other names that we might have been called through our history. I wanted the world to know the impact, the positive impact that my people have had, so that we feel like that we can demand our rightful place in this community and beyond. So it's a lot more than just music.
Indeed.
To us.
And if I could bring this back personally for you, and music being interwoven through all of these experiences for you, even in raising your own family, you have children of the arts as well.
Absolutely. All of our children took music, and it's not just my influence. My husband had a music scholarship that paid his way through college. He was a trumpet player, and so he was a trumpet player in the university marching and concert band. He grew up with that same thing. All of us need to take music. Our parents felt that music would give us that confidence that we needed, and would give us more social skills, all of those things. So our children have grown up with that same thing. As a matter of fact, when they were taking music lessons, it was their father who would sit in the room with them, much to their demise, and watch them rehearse and listen to them rehearse. But we have, all three of our children, as I said, have been very involved in the arts. Our oldest son went to Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. I thought he would be in the school's orchestra, since he had been taking private cello and guitar his whole life, but instead he became the captain of the drum line. Went on to become a dentist, and his children are now taking music. Ryan, our second son, is an artist here in Peoria. Rashad, he's a painter and a sculptor, but he was a trumpet player. Our daughter Andrea is a fine arts photographer. She played the flute and was in the choir. So the arts are very much alive, and again, a reason for me to grow. I now advocate for the visual arts as much as I advocate for and am a champion to the musical arts.
What an amazing journey you've had.
Oh, absolutely.
And we've got just a couple of moments left. What's next for you? I say you're one of the busiest retired people I know. You're teaching OLLI courses at Bradley, still consulting for music, doing private lessons, running the ensemble.
Yeah.
Is there something you feel you have yet to accomplish?
Not really. Not really, because I didn't set out to accomplish these things necessarily. When people say, what was your plan? I can't tell you what my plan was, except to be prepared for whatever God put in front of me that I needed to do. And so I know that sounds pie in the sky. It's really not. I've not had the opportunity to sit back and plan and think about what's best for me. What's best for me is to continue to impact the lives of the people with whom I come in contact with in a very positive way. That's really all I require. Am I a martyr? Absolutely not. But I think all of those things that have been placed before me have just been a blessing, have been challenging, and I thank God that I've been able to meet those challenges. And it is through my training in music that I've been able to take all of that on and to succeed in it, to succeed against all odds.
Well, kudos to you, continued success to you, and thank you for being with us here on Consider This. I know
Thank
everybody
you.
down in Paris is going to be so happy to see you come back to your first home.
Absolutely. Thank
and
you
we
very
here in
much.
your second will be cheering you from here as well.
Thank you so much. This community has been good to us.
Sharon Samuels-Reed, Artistic Director of the Heritage Ensemble. Thank you so much for being here with us on Consider This. I'm Yvonne Greer, and we will see you next time.